come the man who would be the king of comedy, bombed so badly on his very first night, he wept with shame, but miraculously found the courage to go back on stage one more time.
Hi out there in television land. My God, is this in focus?
Clowning around has made Jerry Lewis America's celebrated goofball with a knockout punch. From childhood in the Garden State, Jerry was born into slapstick as the son of a burlesque comedian who blazed the upstate New York nightclub circuit in the 20s and 30s.
I was on a train, I was on a bus, I was in a car with 7 other acts. I was transferred from school to school, 7 different schools in the first 5 years of going to school, which necessitated my being left back in one class at the age of 11, I think. My first trauma.
Jerry still made it to high school, but the rootless young wisecracker found out it was the school of hard knocks.
I would say I was an average student, close to stupid. I hated it with such a passion. I truly hated it, and I was a rebel. And the principal at the school at the time was a part of the Nazi Bund party. And this kind of accelerated my quitting school because he made very strong remarks about the Jewish people. And I hit him and knocked him through the back bay window, which was about a half a flight from the bushes around the school. And thank God, all he had was a broken collarbone. He could have been killed, and I could have been one of the first young Jews to go to the chair in New Jersey.
The experience made him grow up fast. At 16, he turned professional, but his opening act in Buffalo, New York almost left him an endangered species.
I did that first matinee, and I'm doing comedy, a record act, miming to recordings. And after the first number, to hear the sound that you now hear and hear.
How bad was bad?
It was devastating. I thought I was playing to paraplegics without arms. Nothing. And I'm backstage, and I'm packing. And the tears are blinding me to find my things to put in my bag. And I was on the show with a second banana, Max Coleman was his name, who had worked that theater with my dad for many years. And I hear a voice say to me, while I'm packing, "You're not Danny Lewis's son. You can't be." Danny Lewis had courage and guts and was a great pro. You can't have the same blood. And I looked at him, and he sees this crying kid. He said, "The tears aren't going to help. The only thing that's going to help you is to understand that if you walk out of here today, you'll never go on another stage the rest of your life. It's like falling off a bike, falling off a horse, or drowning. You got to do the nighttime show." And he talked me into it.
Putting on a brave face was Jerry's first lesson in the toughest business on earth. Slowly, the act of bravery became the deed itself. The scared kid discovered an inner strength from every bomb.
I think that it takes courage to get up and get knocked down again, and get in the same arena where you've been knocked down and get knocked down again. I don't want to stop getting out of the arena just because I get knocked down every once in a while.
Jerry's had his share of knockdowns and more. In 1965, he took an unplanned pratfall 10 feet into the orchestra pit, severely injured his spinal cord.
I have not, since that night, March 20th, 1965, I have not had a day without pain.
More than a decade later, Jerry was in Houston when he suddenly doubled over with a bleeding ulcer.
I couldn't get my feet away from my chest. It took 3 attendants to lay me on the bed and get my knees away from my chest. I was locked.
But his third medical low blow was almost his last, and it's what Jerry's working hard to prevent happening again. In 1982, a massive heart attack almost left him dead.
The first thing I remember thinking was what I said to Sam, my wife. What's happening to me? Was what I said to her right after they brought me back. I had gone into VTAC and I was gone for 11 or 12 seconds. And when I came out of that, I was frightened because I knew something bad was happening, and I said to Sam, what's happening to me? When I was able to get some sense of what was happening, I felt a humility that I don't think you could live with normally all of your life. It would just be too heavy an emotion to deal with. I think whatever humility we have, that we're fortunate enough to have, is enough to handle. But the humility that I felt at that moment, you can't maintain it. It's overwhelming. You don't know what to do or how to begin thanks. But then you think to yourself, I must have done something good to have been given the gift of a second shot at it.
On our next edition, Jerry on the happiness and the heartache of his kids. Please join us.
In the eulogy at the funeral. As a matter of fact, I think I might have told you once that I was seriously thinking of opening a chain of eulogy stores, where for $20 you go into the store and the guy pulls out your card and reads all the wonderful stuff they're going to say about you after you croak. I would like to hear it now, please.
It may sound like a deadly thought, but as someone who has had several close calls with death, Jerry Lewis today can make light of his own mortality. A 1982 heart attack left him clinically dead for 12 seconds. It had a lasting impact on his spirit, his outlook and way of life.
After the heart surgery, I didn't realize until about 2 or 3 months afterward that I didn't buy as much as I did before. I didn't squander as much as I did before. I'm in love with my cars. I used to buy 3 cars a year, 4 cars. I haven't bought a car since the surgery. I think it has to do with getting older, too. I think that age and being traumatized by dying and being brought back to life forces you to look at what you're doing and forces you to make judgments, changes, options, alternatives. It's really interesting because you don't know what's happening to you. You don't have a voice in this kind of a situation.
Jerry successfully fought to win control of his life after nearly losing it to the pressures of show business. Suicidal depression, addiction to painkillers, a near crippling ulcer, and the heart attack. They are all symptoms of a man who has been ravaged by his career. The hurdles never seem to end. When his heart condition forced him to quit smoking, it caused a weight gain that went way out of control.
The thing that really kicked off my wanting to blow my brains out from obesity was that I tried to put one of my made-to-order silk shirts on, which I hadn't put on for some time. I couldn't button it. I could not button it down the front because it was made for a man that usually weighs 170. I'm 230 and I'm trying to put the shirt on. I remember laying the shirt front down on the bed and cutting up the back all the way to the collar. And that's how I got the shirt on. Leaving the collar open. One button here, one button there, and then a sweater to cover that the buttons were still not making it. I called the doctors the next morning.
When we return, Jerry Lewis reveals the happiness and the heartbreak of his nearly lifelong crusade for Jerry's kids and the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Please stay with us. In an age of charity chic, no one can accuse Jerry of being a fly-by-night fundraiser. His involvement with the Muscular Dystrophy Association began in 1949. To date, he's raised almost $1 billion.
That about 3.5 years ago, very few people knew about. I suppose because of lack of funds, and there was no possible chance of them ever publicizing the dread disease and just what it does.
I wonder if we will see you, I mean, in a rocking chair one day, 95 years of age, still whipping up that frenzy and enthusiasm.
They'd have to beat me to death with a stick if we haven't found the cure. But I think that I won't have to do it that long. I think what researchers are telling us now is that we're getting close. And when I first began, the really great powers in medicine were telling me I didn't have a prayer.
But at a New York press conference, Jerry announced that scientists had discovered and isolated a gene that could help solve the mystery to the crippling disease. It was the best news he'd heard in decades.
Now that we've made this tremendous advance, we'll be asking the American public to help us as they've never helped us before. My kids cannot wait much longer.
Jerry's commitment to his kids has not gone unnoticed. On top of his other accolades, he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1977, the first entertainer in history to be so honored.
Some men dream about getting up to the plate, knocking it out of the park with bases loaded. Some men dream about flying a 747. Whatever men's dreams are, I never dreamt of such a possibility. But I certainly couldn't begin to think of what could parallel that. For me, nothing.
Touched by the recognition, Jerry says nothing equals his fulfillment from working alongside these special children. But sometimes that very closeness takes away the funny man's smile.
Ben Terraberry has been our poster child for 2 years. And each poster child is not unlike my own children because I spend a year or two with them. And I had to say goodbye to Ben. Because he's done his job. You can't handle it. I'm sorry. A poster child that we select becomes part of your life, and not all of them are still here. And we never know where they're going to be when I say goodbye to them. When Ben put his arms around me, and he could only reach my buns with his little arms, and he squeezed, and I said goodbye to him, the tears were just a manifestation of the tearing of my gut that I felt. I felt I didn't want to let go. I didn't feel any different than when my son went into the service or when my sons were hurt or troubled. I just felt a piece of my life was going out of me. I made a contribution to Ben by being his friend and his hero. But in a very strong way, he was somewhat of a hero to me, too, because he took the best from me, the best that I had to offer. If everyone could let somebody get through to them, they will be the benefactors. Because that's someone that gets through to you and takes down the human facade and just strips you bare, will get the best you are from you. And you will feel a feeling of excellence or a feeling of esteem that you might not have felt were it not for their being a part of your life. I wish everybody felt it.
On our next edition, how Jerry auditioned a young actress for a part in his movie and ended up with the role of a lifetime as wife number 2. Directly ahead, the other side of Bill, all sewn up. But first, he auditioned her for a part in his movie, then cast her in a bigger role. She's put the direction back in his life, and Jerry Lewis gives wife number 2 all the credit. Don't don't believe that tears of a clown stuff, the notion of a laughing comic who cries alone. Jerry Lewis is a happy man, with good reason. All his tears are behind him. The painful split with Dean Martin, partner for a decade, a near-fatal heart attack, and the divorce from Patty, wife of 30 years. Alive and well and happy, Jerry had us both going in circles on the subject of his newfound bliss. Thanks, he says, to second wife Sam, whom he wed in '83.
How would you describe the strength that you get from Sam?
She is a kind of a rock that if you were on a boat, she has these wonderful hooks that I can tie to. She fell in love with what she calls a special man. She always lets me know that she believes me to be a special man. And I think her conduct forces me to try to be that. Even though she's satisfied with what she has, she forces me to try to be better. She is on the kind of a pedestal for me that I only want to bring her excellence.
Who fell in love with whom first?
Well, I'm much more charming than she is, so I think she had to have fallen in love with me first. I think she was just a scared, naive ballerina who was working in discos to make a living. I found her in an audition, hardly working. I was looking for great dancers for the film. And I was at a point where I was very satisfied that I had already decided that the separation from my first wife was necessary for the betterment of her life and mine and the children. And I had wonderful dreams of this forthcoming bachelorhood. I was married when I was 18. I didn't have an apartment where you brought broads, for crying out loud. I never did any of that stuff. Not on the open. Not in the open, I should say. Hey, bachelorhood, man, I'm going to swing. And now this little twit walks into my life. I never got that damn bachelor apartment. I never forgave her for that. I fell in love with her immediately.
You might not know it to watch them, but Sam's influence has mellowed Jerry, making him less caustic, more even-tempered.
She keeps you on your toes. And I guess that's what keeps you young. I mean, she's got me doing things that I've never done before in my life. Taking the garbage out. Well, I wouldn't hear of such a thing. I used to have a running gag. I'd say to her, this is menial labor. I don't do menial. I'm a famous movie star. She'd say, really? Well, how about the famous movie star getting the damn garbage out?
But if at times Sam plays mother to the little boy in Jerry, the age difference does give Jerry seniority in their relationship. Sam is more than 20 years younger. That makes her closer in age to his children than her husband. But as far as he's concerned, older men work better with younger women.
If what I have could be called the role model, yes, absolutely. I don't believe in any generalities. I don't think that what works for one person is necessarily going to be functional for someone else. But it sure as hell works for me. I am saddened by the fact that when I think that I am 24 years her senior, I'm going to leave sooner. That saddens me. If I had one wish and you rub the lamp and it could come true, I would only ask to have 24 years cut off. Give me that so that I'm with her and I got a shot at going the full 9 yards.
Don't miss our next edition. For the first time ever, Jerry breaks his silence on the heartbreak of his split with Dean Martin. Still adored, they were the ultimate comedy duo, but fans never realized that behind the wisecracks, professional rivalry was hurling Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin towards a head-on collision. For the first time ever, the king of comedy breaks his silence on the hurt that took 20 years to heal. Song said it all.
Why, everybody knows that you left me.
Because you were mean to me. You continually picked on me and abused me, and just how much of that nonsense you think I could stand for?
Jerry Lewis and the heartache that took 20 years to heal. The big bust-up after a decade on stage with Dean Martin. Jerry Lewis has been yucking it up as a solo performer since the mid-50s. But jump back to the 40s and a duo called Martin and Lewis were all the rage. The superstar comedy team of Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin were joined at the hip by a funny bone grafted from burlesque. Like many legendary acts, theirs was based on a very simple premise.
The title of the original idea for two guys was Sex and Slapstick. And I had a talk with my dad one night about my writing this, and I laid it on my dad, said, help me, Dad, and tell me the two acts all through the years that haven't been two milkmen, two mailmen, two short guys, two fat guys. It's always been two of the same, though they didn't look the same, they were the same. He says, what are you getting at? I said, I want to see Clark Gable and a monkey as a team. I said, I don't know who the two people are, but the notion is so strong because the comic will be the one the audience will sympathize with, and the handsome ladies' man is the heavy. Well, that was how the premise started. Never knowing that it was going to be me, the monkey, and Dean, the Gable.
But it soon became clear that this duo weren't just monkeying around. Martin and Lewis were making a fortune from movies and stage appearances. Their coast-to-coast success was meteoric, even by today's standards.
You can't believe that two men could have earned $500 million with the following. Did you take a bath this morning? Why? Is there one missing? I mean, it's not only ludicrous, it borders on implausible, impossible. Did you take a bath this morning? Why, is there one missing? They paid them what?
People stop and stare. Why, it's so hard to bear.
I know, Teddy.
Teddy?
So hard to bear. Teddy, Teddy bear.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But as Cole Porter said, it was just too hot not to cool down. By the mid-50s, the pressure of partnership was taking the toll. As the cut-up, Jerry was getting all the laughs. That meant Dean was getting much less attention.
Never said a word to me about it. But I loved him enough to see the pain. And it was killing me that these dumb audiences weren't seeing that the magic of the kid was him. The kid could never function without him. And that's not false modesty. I know how funny I was. But I was funny because he was next to me. Because what I was doing and what an audience never ever realized, and moreover, something I never told anybody before in my life, I was entertaining him. I was looking for his acceptance. He was my big brother, the handsome father figure, and the ladies' man. When little did the public know that I was with the broads all the time, and he was sitting sipping scotch and soda with two friends from Steubenville.
Now, this is a very sad thing, and now you've got to be sad. You know? This isn't a happy thing. This is real sad. You come in, sad.
When we return, Jerry talks for the first time about the agonizing split with Dean Martin. They tried to hide the anger behind the gags, but tension between Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin finally snapped. Hostility and bitterness had taken over the wisecracks. There was no communication when the duo weren't working. Their farewell performance came after completion of their 17th movie. On July 25, 1956, it was goodbye at New York's Copacabana. 10 years to the very day since they formed their act.
I motivated the split without question. I was the reason for it. I knew it was time because the breach had become very, very heavy, and I was too emotional, and I was afraid of heart failure. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take that he was in such pain anymore, just as I was in pain. And it had to be. And it was the best thing that ever happened for him because his growth came out of the break. How long could a man take what he took in retrospect? Jerry this, Jerry that, Jerry's the clown, Jerry's a businessman. The reviews come out, it's all Jerry, that silly kid, that crazy voice, that maniac, etc., etc. I don't know that I could have taken 10 years of that kind of being ignored, which is what he took.
That's like stakes through your heart, beating each other up.
Yeah, and it saved him and it saved me because it would have deteriorated in the eyes of the public. It would have ultimately deteriorated and you'd have seen it chip away like a fine painting. And that would have been sad.
It was 20 long years before they saw each other again. In 1976, Frank Sinatra instigated a surprise reunion that happened live on the air at the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon.
It was a wonderful moment. I had tremendous feelings of joy. I once said to somebody, I don't know that I would have had the guts to come on to Dean's turf if he was doing a show. If the tables were turned, I don't know that I could have done that. So I thought it took great strength on his part. And I haven't seen him since. It hurts me because I thought that revisiting, so to speak, that Frank instigated, would open the door to a better relationship again, or a new relationship. But in defense of Dean, I wrote him a love letter and a thank you. And there was no response. And I wasn't hurt by that because I know him. He's a very private man. And he knows, just as I knew that he understood me, he knows I understand him. I think he knows in his heart that I understand that he's not one to sit down and write a letter. That's not his style. He's not one to acknowledge a letter. That's not his style. And that's part of his charm. He just doesn't give a damn about a lot of things that a lot of us are prisoners to.
Having been reunited by Mr. Sinatra, do you feel that the bond came back without it being necessary for the two of you to talk about it?
No, not completely. I don't think so. I don't think so. I tried to. I tried to create something that probably isn't there, just for my own peace of mind. I play games with myself sometimes. Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. I will only tell you about the times I win.
Our sincere thanks to Jerry Lewis for finally sharing the untold chapter of American humor.
Arthritis sufferers, if you buy this